Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Perry, also known as Books Aren't Boring, and today we're going to be covering Lord of the Flies. I thought at first that the book was called The Lord of the Flies. I guess I've just been tricked into thinking that, the Mandela effect or whatever that is. I was reminded of this book from one of the several online forums that I'm in, and someone had mentioned Lord of the Flies they're reading, and I was like, I haven't read it in a long time, so I figured that I'd give it another chance and then do a video on it, because I did not have very many ideas for books for my next couple videos. So if you could kindly possibly suggest some books in the comments below, that would be great, so that I can continue making videos and not trying to scrounge up things that I very vaguely remember. So I haven't read Lord of the Flies since 8th grade, I'm 99% sure. I remember liking it a decent amount. I remember having very weirdly specific quizzes on it because my 8th grade teacher was very specific in the way that she did her quizzes and tests for books. This should be fun. I have a vague summary of the book here on my computer, so that I can give you a rundown of it and then give you not necessarily an analysis, but why you should read the book, or at least look into reading it, of course, as I do for all of my videos. If you've been here before, you should know the format. If not, potentially click subscribe so you can see more videos like this. I know that saying to click subscribe at the beginning of a video is kind of presumptuous, but you know what? We gotta put the early plug in there. Or at least give it a thumbs up if you found this video interesting. Let's get to it. Also, you may have noticed I have a new backdrop. If you're new to this channel, you will not know that this backdrop is new, but if you look at my previous thumbnails, you will notice that before it was just a blank wall. Technically, it was not a wall, it was something else. It was a cabinet, but I'm not going to worry about that. We now have a background. Tell me if the background is too busy or not. It kind of looks like I'm green screened onto this bookstore thing, but I'm hoping that you can still notice that I am the center. Anyway, let's get to it. So here we have rich kids crash on an island and slowly go insane. A summary. So this does not sound fun at all. It is not. So rich British schoolboys. Very fun. They're apparently in a war. They crash on an island. All that stuff. There's the main two characters, Ralph and Piggy. They're not friends, but I don't know how to describe this. They're friend coded. They're the two main characters. They're the center of attention most of the time. Ralph is the real main character. Then we have Jack Merridew. He doesn't get introduced as Jack for the first page, but he is an attention hog most of the time. He's I'm better than all of you. He's the antagonist, of course, but he's also the leader, I believe, of the boys' choir, whatever that means. We don't have that in elementary schools here, as far as I know, in America. But if you know what the heck a school boys' choir is, please inform me. Everyone follows Jack because, of course, he's the leader of the boys' choir, and they wear robes, black robes for some reason. 12-year-olds wearing black robes doesn't really sound cool, but that's why I'm wearing a black shirt, to represent the school choir boys, of course. I plan everything ahead, obviously. Then some more about the main characters. Ralph is your main character. That's about it. He's, of course, resourceful. He's mainly morally righteous. The whole idea of the book is that people's morals devolved when they're not in defined society. Ralph is supposed to be the guy that's yes, we should keep our ethics and people should be nice to each other, while everyone else is anarchy. And then Piggy, who's the fat one, of course. He's the comic relief of a book that has no comic relief. Basically, everyone makes fun of him, even though he's useful for many reasons. And then he dies. Spoiler alert. If you were planning on reading this book, then you probably wouldn't need to watch my video if you were planning on reading this book. So, hello. Then, of course, we have the conch shell. As we all know, it's very iconic. Even if you haven't read Lord of the Flies, you've probably heard of the conch shell at some point. It's not a meme, at risk of sounding old to people, but it's just kind of a joke. The he has the conch shell thing is kind of seen in many cases. It may be referenced in some other books that you read that are not connected to school. It's just a very kind of iconic part of this book that people take away from it. Other than the whole overarching idea of the plot no one really remembers. One thing I specifically remember from reading this in 8th grade was that one of the questions on the test that we were taking was that Piggy's aunt has a candy shop. Obviously, this is not an important thing at all. I'm pretty sure the only thing that might be important about it is candy. He's overweight. That doesn't really matter. I don't know why it was a question on the test, but I remember it very vividly, so now you shall remember it very vividly as well. Then they start to get their act together. Once they blow the conch shell and they decide on the leaders and like who's gonna do what, they get their act together. They start making fires, trying to hunt for food because otherwise they'll, die. Then a kid goes missing. I don't think he's ever seen again. Then of course we have Simon Jesus. That's not him. He's not technically a biblical figure. However, this is rich British schoolboys who are probably like Catholic or Christian in some form. So, of course, the book is going to sneak a Jesus metaphor in there. Basically, it's not necessarily Jesus metaphor, but that's kind of the joke we had in 8th grade, where he was the really self-righteous one. He was the one keeping the group together, kind of. He's supposed to represent the innate good in society so that when he dies, it's when everything goes crazy. So, R.I.P. Simon. You were the only cool one here. Both sides of the people, so like the protagonist and the antagonist, they're both supposed to represent society. Society! Yes, both the protagonist and the antagonist have to do with society. The antagonists are the inherently bad part of society. Protagonists are an inherently good part. Not as inherently good as Simon is, but still inherently good. The antagonists are the people who want to rule over everyone, want to like hurt people in order to catch their goal, while the protagonists want everyone to be not happy, but they want everyone to work together to get to their final goal, which makes more sense overall. But as you know, Lord of the Flies, not like that. Everyone goes crazy. Of course, there's the going towards savagery by hunting a pig, and then the pig's head is there. The pig's head talks to Simon. There's also the beast, which is kind of a fictional being that causes a lot of the drama. Like, they think Simon is the beast, so they dogpile him until he dies. But the beast is never actually seen, I'm pretty sure. Or it's discovered that, like, the beast was kind of like them. Once Piggy dies, it's downhill from there. He, like, falls off, dies. And then the forest gets set on fire. Everyone's running around. The forest fire thing actually lasts for like a majority of the book, now that I think about it. Because, yeah, the fire was like this big thing and the island was on fire. Someone set the island on fire. Pretty sure it was like Roger, because he's like one of the antagonists. And then later we find out that the fire is what helped the outside world find them. So anyway, when the end of the book comes and the fire has gone, the fire has taken over the island, gone, they're discovered. Then the boys realize that, like, the whole world is savagery or something. So basically, anyway, we're going to move along now to the part where I explain why you should read this book, why I find it interesting, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of a basic book, that's what I'll say. Like, it's not easy to read, because I'm not going to say it's easy to read because there's people who find it difficult to read, and I'm not going to invalidate what their experience about it. But it is kind of a basic book in terms of like the story and stuff. Like, you can find other allegories, is that the word? Allegories that have similar messages to Lord of the Flies. It's just Lord of the Flies is kind of one of the first of its kind that became popular, so obviously people are going to use it. But the whole idea of Lord of the Flies is kind of one of the more transferable stories. It's not a dystopia. It's just taking of a social phenomenon that actually happens and putting it in like a vacuum, basically, where, now I think about it, Lord of the Flies is a bit like a kind of scientific experiment that is put into book form, and then you can analyze it however you want. Obviously, there's a ton of like biblical stuff in there. Have never taken a Bible class, am not Christian, do not know. But I do know that it is very biblical in nature, so obviously there's going to be that, and then there's going to be like the whole idea of like people will always revert to like anarchy, basically. They'll always want to self-destruct, kind of the idea in chemistry, basically any science, that like entropy is constant, like things are always slowly destroying themselves. Like if you leave somewhere untended to, there will be dust, like you can't just leave it. But humans also tend towards that state as well if there's no overarching power source. And you could say that like, oh, but they had the kids in charge, but since they're all the same age and younger, they're not going to immediately assume that like, oh, okay, these kids are in charge, therefore I have to listen to them because they're all 12 and under. 12-year-olds don't make good decisions also. Like if you took an older group of people, they would still probably go to anarchy, but it would take slightly longer or slightly less time depending on who you chose to go on that island. Who knows? There's also a lot of like speculation. You might in your classes do exercises where you're like, what would happen if this group of people went there? What happened if this group of people went there? 12-year-old English schoolboys are not exactly a universal measure of how people act when they go into solitary situations where they have to rely on themselves. So it could just depend. To be honest, as a read, this book, I don't enjoy actually reading the book. However, the concept that you come out of it with after reading it, please read it, is very interesting to explore and will probably stick with you for a while. For example, it's been years since I've read this book, but it's still, if you asked me to explain Lord of the Flies, I'd still be able to explain it. Probably not in as much detail as I just did here, but like if you ask me a couple years down the line from now what Lord of the Flies is about, I will still likely be able to answer because it's such a widely known and respected book. So reading the book yourself will make an interesting venture, as well as you can kind of you can kind of see in depth what I'm talking about here with the whole Simon is Jesus and the pig head causes hallucinations, because the pig head ends up being like the Lord of the Flies, which is the name of the book, haha, with no the, haha, Mandela effect, oops. So for real, again, I would highly recommend you reading this book if you have to read it for school. Don't just spark notes it or whatever, like actually go through the book, because there's a lot of interesting nuances that you will miss, and I know I didn't go into all of them, but definitely it will help you out, because just the spark notes reading of it, no matter how in depth you may go, is nowhere compared to like the actual depth that the book goes into, because there's a lot of little things that happen that are still important, that still might get mentioned, that you still need to know about. So thank you. Also, if you look at my posting schedule, you may see that there is a big gap from the last video posted to here. Yes, I do have school, I do have other things, but if you check the links in the description, you will see a website, and there you can see where I update more, because it's easier to just write a blog post than make an entire video and edit it and all of that. So if you could please check out my website and possibly share it, or just go follow the Instagram that website and this YouTube channel are connected to, then you can see more frequent updates, and you will see that I have not just abandoned this account. I am constantly thinking about it basically, and I just have other things. So thank you. Please, please, please put any suggestions you have for books in the comments below. I will look at them possibly like the second after you post them, because I am on social media like all the time. Or if you want to go to my Instagram and comment, that would be way more helpful, because even though my notifications are messed up, I will still check it, because I will get the thing that says comment. Yes, thank you very much for watching this video about Lord of the Flies by William Golding. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below, and thank you again for watching. See you next time. Bye.